Welcome! It's Rucks, Balls and Overballs, and we're back for episode 25 of the fans' favourite rugby podcast, hosted by your fans' favourite fans who talk about rugby. And that is me, Dave, joined as ever by my humble co-host. It's Rory. Rory, you know what to do.
Hello, hi David, hi listener, how are we all?
Listeners.
Yes. Well, I like to make it personal.
Okay, well, do you want to say it each and every time for every listener we've got?
God, how would I have the time?
Oh,
David?
tell me about it. And you'd have to travel across every continent on the planet because we have listeners across the globe, Rory. But let's not go down that route.
It's a global podcast.
It's a global podcast. How's your week been?
It's been excellent. I've been to a certain rugby game over the weekend, which was marvellous.
Lovely.
We'll be talking about that, I'm sure.
I reckon we might.
Yeah, I've finally re-entered the gym. So, I mean, from that point of view, I feel slightly terrible, but I do feel a little bit...
feel better for it.
Well, a bit holier than thou, yeah.
Okay.
How about yourself?
Well, unfortunately wasn't present at any particular rugby game over the weekend, but I have certainly watched a fair bit of rugby. I'm fresh back, so for anyone who is witnessing any clip that takes place over the next week that I take from the podcast, I may look a little dishevelled because I've literally just got through the front door about 15 minutes ago from playing 2 games of man versus fat rugby. Because I'm a team player, and that means I play for multiple teams. It seems at this point, because.
You're really more of a teams player.
I'm a teams player. I'm going to use my platform right now, Rory, to put a plea out there.
Go on.
If you are in the Bristol area and you want to join me on this journey of losing weight, come along to Man vs Fat North Bristol, because I've lost over 20 kilograms, so it obviously works for me. And I'd be really disappointed if player numbers start to dwindle. Because this is why I'm having to play 2 games, because some teams are short on a week. And if that keeps happening, people might stop turning up. And I don't want that to happen. So I'll use this little platform of ours, Rory, just to put a little plea. If you are the Bristol Bears or a local grassroots club in the Bristol area, how about giving this a little share and get the word out there that Man vs Fat Bristol, always welcoming to new players.
Absolutely. And if you want to find out a bit more about the Man versus Fat rugby journey, go back through our archive. We do have an interview with the guys from Man versus Fat. And they do great work. And, David's lost 20 kilos. So if anyone who's ever picked up 20 kilos can attest to how much better he must be feeling right now, not having to carry that around all day.
Absolutely.
And if you want to lose 20 kilos, I implore you to go and join him.
Yeah. And if you're not in the Bristol area, look up any club they've got. Because I've been messaged by a few people who've seen some of our videos on YouTube and stuff, and they've said that they've joined after seeing them. So I'm like, that feels pretty good. So, yeah, I'm going to clip that up, and I'm going to pop that all over our socials. That's for you, Rory. That's for you, the listener. But it's also for the wider audience. But I'm going to step down from my pedestal, and I've really hijacked mundane banter there for a mundane plug. And this podcast, Rory, let me tell you what we're going to be doing here.
Do it.
We're going to cover a few bits of rugby news that have taken place this week. There's been some interesting stuff come about, so we'll talk about that for a little while. And then we're a Premiership focused podcast, so we don't care what happened in the URC. We don't care what happened elsewhere. We're talking about one game and one game alone. We're talking about the Premiership Rugby Final. So we're going to talk about that at length, because there's a few talking points. Once we've done that, we're going to touch on what is going to quickly become our speciality, our niche, the Under-20 World Cup taking place in Italy. I will give you a little run through about the format, the pools, and what our plans are to bring more of that to you, the listener. Maybe some DPRFR, we got time, but we'll see about that. How does that sound, Rory? Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me, David. I'm well up for that.
Fan dabby dozy. Well, let's go. First things first, rugby news. Insert song here that sounds like a news channel. Sadly, I don't have any of those songs on file, so sorry, listener. But first piece of news. Have you seen the news about the rebrand of Premiership Rugby?
What do you mean, Prem Rugby?
Yeah, that thing that we call it already.
Yeah. So we now have Prem Rugby and Champ Rugby.
Yeah, we really seem like a monosyllabic sort of a sport now, because we can only deal with things with one syllable in, it seems.
Yeah. I mean, apparently it was done in consort with a lot of the current players. So, I mean, look, it is what people call it. We
call
refer
it
to the Prem.
Yeah.
We call it the Prem, and I didn't really call it the Champ, but I probably will now, I suppose, because it's rebranded to that. Just makes sense to.
Yeah.
It's not,
It's not earth-shattering.
It's not earth-shattering. It's pretty middle of the road, but I suppose it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I just hope a consultancy firm's not been paid six figures to come up with that.
Yeah, I mean, then, far be it from me to suggest there's any ties between English rugby and large consultancy firms in the city, but it's possible.
It is possible. It's very feasible. And some of the other bits that came along with this, it seems that they've reaffirmed the ambition for the away end. So they're talking about extending that trial and having it in more fixtures. So that's fine. There was also talk of taking some games stateside in that announcement.
Yeah, this is where they lose me a little bit. It's the thing, isn't it? Everyone thinks they can crack America with their sport and then open up this whole new market of, where all the money is. I don't see the value in it. I think rugby in this country in particular, but probably global, has a better path to double down on nurturing and growing the existing fan base or the existing fan bases in the existing areas, because they haven't got that right yet. No. So I don't know why they suddenly think they're equipped to then take the sport on the road. Look, I'm not 100% against it, because we've got some other news that may be able to help with this as a marketing ploy.
Yeah.
If it works, brilliant. But my gut feel is it won't. And as I say, I think rugby needs to spend more time nurturing its home base rather than expanding elsewhere.
It does feel like there's a little
inorganic way.
It does feel like there's a little rush for this American market, because there's rumours of them trying to get an American team in the URC. There's rumours about some sort of American link-up with Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship. There just seems to be a little bit of a mad scramble. Maybe it's because the World Cup is taking place there in the not-too-distant future. But it is a bit odd that all that's going on at the same time, and then this is announced. But I don't see it myself. I agree with you. Right now, what Prem Rugby need to do is focus on Prem Rugby in this country.
Which they have, and it has gone well this season.
Yeah,
you've seen the metrics: 10% rise in viewing figures, massive growth in the 18 to 35 demographic, which is the one that everyone wants.
Yeah,
more sold out games, 30 up from 18 this season.
Yeah. Final sold out quicker than any other final.
So,
lots of good news.
Why change tact completely rather than doubling down on
what's working,
what you're doing already?
Yeah.
As I say, if it works, great, but I just can't see best one in the world. Let's say Gloucester and Sale go and play in New York. I don't know if that's going to capture the hearts and minds of the locals.
No, and I'm not sure what fixture does, if I'm honest. I know in our heads there's some real huge historic rivalries. I don't think Bath versus Leicester resonates with an American citizen the same way it does with a domestic England rugby fan.
No, I mean, when London Irish did it, there was a bit more.
That was in Boston. Yeah, there's a connection.
There's a bit more of an ability to do that. I don't think many Americans care about Saracens or Northampton, or let's be realistic. Any of the current clubs, because they're not global brands like that.
No,
it's, to be honest, it just feels like another speculative move.
Unless they take the Bristol Bears women and they get Alona Mar to play there, that's the only other thing I could think of. But that's a different story.
Depends if she's still there, I suppose.
Yeah, but I don't think she is. Next,
360.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, that we're not talking about that this week, Rory. Had enough of that last week. Next piece of news. Now, it's not 100% news, but it is the Red Bull purchase of Newcastle Falcons, which has been widely reported in actual reputable journalistic areas.
I think the Guardian broke it.
The Guardian have broken it, as amongst some other kind of websites and stuff, that the deal is done. There's talk that Red Bull will be purchasing Newcastle Falcons along with all the debt that goes to the club, which was something like £49.5 million, which is a scarily high figure, and also a higher figure that London Irish were in debt when they went bust. Little sidebar there. Other part of it is that there is a agreement to stay at Kingston Park, which I think, the Newcastle Falcon fan or two may be happy about. So what we talked about a couple of podcasts ago seems to be happening, Rory, and I don't want to get too excited because this is a huge marketing beast coming to our league, but it could really open some doors, kind of what you're alluding to.
Yeah, it's an absolutely superb bit of news for the league, for Newcastle, for the fans. The fact that they're agreeing to stay in Newcastle and double down on that market. There were already talks about building closer links to Newcastle United, the football team, which I think is a great move. When they staged a game at St James's Park a few years ago, and they had the special strip, which I thought was it was a great strip in and of itself, but a great move by them. I'm 100% behind this move. You mentioned the debt. I think it might be close to 39 million.
I might have got one of my numbers wrong.
Yeah, but it's all speculative. But from Red Bull's perspective, that's a rounding error. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not insignificant money to your average rugby club, but to Red Bull as a company, it doesn't make a huge amount of difference.
That's a few broken cans, isn't it?
Yeah. And if they can grow that brand in Newcastle to a club that's got a growing and steady fan base, lure in some big names. There's some big rumours already. Obviously, Red Bull are very tied in with the likes of Jack Knowles, Sia Khaleesi.
I hear they want to do some sabbatical style things like Geordie Barrett to Leinster.
Yeah, all these rumours are already flying around. My gut feel is that for this season, they may try and get one marquee sabbatical, but the more likely bulk of the move will be just to bulk out the squad with some of the guys who are still knocking about at the moment, which I think is a great move in and of itself. Steady the ship and improve the atmosphere whilst improving things behind the scenes, and then turbo it from next year whilst utilising the brand. But I think it's fantastic news, particularly for Newcastle, but I think for the league and actually for the sports. For the sports, a great bit of news because
it's a huge partner.
And if the sport does what they should do, and let's be realistic, that's not guaranteed. But if the sport does what they should do, which is to let Red Bull run with this and be creative with their marketing, have input to the wider league marketing, and make it a really symbiotic relationship with the whole league as well as Newcastle, this could potentially change the game, English rugby. So I'm thrilled for a number of reasons, and I'm hoping it gets confirmed in the next few days so that we can start to see some of these moves take place.
Yeah, me too. And one thing I do like with the Red Bull model of their purchasing sports teams is what they're doing with Newcastle really follows a model where they purchase an underperforming side with low attendances, but they don't come in and do a Manchester City and just throw money at it and kind of just purchase star players. They build from within. In football alone, but you see it in Formula 1 and other sports, they create academies, they create pipelines of talent. And that aspect of it for me, as a real fan of that pipeline of talent that comes through the English system, that excites me just as much as just the general news, because they will get the academy right up there, which I know there have been issues with their academy. So that excites me in itself. So very exciting time for Northern Rugby, very exciting time for Premiership Rugby, and hopefully we will see some confirmation in the not too distant future.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see them doing something like a championship feeder club or a league Nat 1 feeder club, maybe the likes of Leeds could potentially start to benefit from
Sheffield.
something like this.
Sheffield are a growing team.
Sheffield, there's lots of options of teams they could. Obviously RB Leipzig team they've got, but they've got RB Salzburg as well. They had some even smaller clubs knocking around that the names of which escape me at the moment. People forget from Formula One fans won't forget, but they bought I think it was Jaguar Racing originally
for £1.
And look where they've grown that to. So I think it's great news. Great news for the sport, and I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope they don't get deterred by the
naysayers,
traditional viewpoints who will probably be reticent to some of the things I'm sure they want to do initially, both from the stakeholders within the game and also the fans, probably from other teams. I'm sure will balk at some of their suggestions, but I hope they push through and really go to town with this, because I think they could do something a bit different and really take this on.
Couldn't agree more. Third bit of news for you, Rory, that's taken place this week. It is return of the Faz. Johann Farrell confirmed returning to Saracens, announced on a 2-year deal. So the rumoured 5-year deal hasn't been announced as far as I'm aware. But he's returning on a 2-year deal to play for Saracens. Fully expect him to turn to a coach at some point after that. But good news.
I think it's a player-coach deal, isn't it?
I'm not sure. I'm not certain. I've not seen I've just seen it's a 2-year deal rather than a 5-year deal that has been reported.
From what I've seen reported, it's a player-coach deal.
Right.
So he's obviously, if that's true, he's already thinking about that transition into coaching, which I think is a great move for him. Obviously, Paris hasn't been quite the success that he hoped for. He's got a lot of injuries. I think ultimately the amount of rugby he's played in his career has just caught up with him, and he's probably not going to be able to go on as long as Alex Good did. So he's probably already thinking 2 years' time. If a 5-year deal suggests that he thinks he's going to play until he's 37, 38, a 2-year deal suggests...
So the rumour was that the 5-year deal was 2 years of being a part-time player coach and 3 years of being a full-time coach. That was the rumour.
Well, in which case that would make sense that he thinks he's maybe got 2 more seasons maximum left in the body. So I suspect he's unlikely to end up back in an England shirt again, which in some ways is sad. I've got some great talent at fly half, but I still love Owen Farrell, and he's the ultimate competitor. But my gut feel is he'll end up being a really good coach. He seems to have the mind for it. Someone like Owen Farrell, similar to George Ford, I think they've just got that.
You do feel like we've got 2 world-class coaches in waiting, don't we? That are they're just coming to the end of their careers. And I think, depending if that's what they want to do, it certainly looks like Owen Farrell wants to do it, but I've got high hopes for his abilities. Well,
the Ford family, obviously Mike Ford was a coach.
Joe Ford announced as a sale coach today.
I actually played with Joe Ford for a few months because we were being coached by the younger Ford, who didn't end up playing Jacob. He coached Westcliff for a couple of seasons pre-pandemic.
Lovely.
Good mind for the game as well. I think he's coaching Ipswich Grammar now.
Oh, well, they certainly create some talent.
So it's obviously in the blood with the Ford family, and I think it looks like it's going to be in the blood with the Farrell family as well. No, I think great news to have him back in the league. Again, it's another name. It's another bit of pulling power for a star name coming back to the league, which is great to see. And so I'm unapologetically an Owen Farrell fan, so I'm pleased to see him back.
I think this is another good bit of news for the league. Having these players in the league is much better than not having them in the league, and it's good news for Saracens because I think what we've said all season that their forwards are kind of a really big part of their identity, and their backs haven't quite been the difference maker they have been in the past. Having someone like Farrell back to steer the ship, perhaps his kicking, maybe he won't play every week, but one criticism you could point at Saracens this season is their goal kicking has been poor. That's one thing you get with Owen Farrell is world-class goal kicking. So it's a win-win for Saracens as far as I'm concerned.
No downside.
The only downside is when you're fans of other teams, you've got to play against Owen Farrell. But as we are generally promoters of the sport, we are pro this. And then the final bit of news, Rory, the England squad that has been pulled together for the training camp for the match against a France 15. Now, I don't believe this is a capped game, so this won't be George Ford's 100th cap.
No, I don't believe so. I think it's treated basically like a Barbarians game, isn't it?
Yeah, it is treated like a Barbarians game, but it is an interesting squad that's been pulled together, I'd say.
Yeah, some notable omissions, particularly the Leicester wingers, Hasser Collins and Radwan.
Yeah.
Will Muir makes the cut, which he's been fantastic this season. And he's probably well worth a call-up, although I would say if I was Hassel Collins, I'd be pretty disappointed.
Freddie Stewart's
couple of old Freddie Stewart's in, which is a very good season, and actually Furbank isn't in, so that suggests they're probably going to give Furbank the summer off to recover,
and
along with Ollie Slightholme.
Arundel's short return to the fold. He was brought in 3 days ago to be dropped for this squad, which is quite interesting.
Interesting call there.
No faster.
But again, that's personally, I think, quite disappointing. But you can't argue with Trevor Davison, Joe Hayes, or Apoka Fajour.
So my only question is Fasibon still eligible for the under-20s?
It's an interesting question. I don't know. Is the long and short of it?
I'd have to look into that because that's the only thing that makes a little bit of sense in me to not take him.
The thing about Afo, the thing about Afo is he is obviously a man mountain. He's already proved himself to be a top level scrummager. He's arguably in the top 3 or 4 tight heads in the league at the moment already, but he's still, I think, struggling to impose the rest of his game at men's rugby. Struggling's a strong word, actually. He's not.
I feel like he's done quite a good job.
He's struggling is too strong. But if you compare him to, say, Apoka Fajour,
he's like a manner to the manner born.
He's getting a lot more ball in hand, and he's been a lot more impactful at ball in hand. Afo is possibly a byproduct of just the way Gloucester are playing, but obviously a lot of width to width doesn't necessarily play into the strength of a tight head.
No. If anything,
carrying the ball.
That's nightmare-inducing, those words.
For me, I would wake up in a cold sweat. But I always wake up in a cold sweat. So I think he's probably still trying to find his feet with that. In an 80-minute performance or a 50, 60-minute performance as props tend to play, which will come because there's been enough flashes of it in the season to say that he's definitely got the ability to do it. But that development from under-20s to men's rugby, set piece-wise, has been pretty much seamless, which actually, for a prop, that's the big step. That's the big step up, is to be able to handle yourself at a men's level scrum. But if Afo's going to go on to be the tight head that we believe he will be, next season probably is going to be the time when he needs to start getting his hand on the ball a bit more, which he's absolutely capable of.
Oh, yeah, it's in his wheelhouse.
He's actually very mobile for his size.
Yeah.
He's got a good skill set. There have been some good flashes of that. I remember one, it was against Bath in the
very early rounds, I think. I remember in the early part of the season, he was very mobile, I thought.
But I'm thinking slightly later in the season, when we played Bath in the Challenge Cup, which wasn't a great day generally for Gloucester. We did score one particularly good try, and Afo threw a really nice, over-the-top, sort of 15, 20-metre pass out to the wing.
Oh, lovely.
When he was in space. And you looked at it and you went, oh, it's in there.
It's there.
It's in there. It's just getting him in the right places, which will come. Maybe 1 year too early for him at this point.
That's fair. I think a couple of other notable absentees from the squad. Ricky Massey-White has been dropped.
I think unlucky, but actually the centres suddenly become very competitive. Seb Atkinson picked, well-deserved. Northmore and Beard in, which is probably fair enough based on the amount of times they've been in the England squad. Although I would suggest that Massey-White's currently in better form, but you pick a little bit based on what you've seen them in camps.
Yeah,
Jomo in there, well-deserved. He's been brilliant all season. I'm a big fan of Jomo. Henry Slade's still in there, I guess, because they need experience. Fraser Dingwall not.
He's rehabbing.
Rehabbing.
So out of those centres, I really, really, really want to see Seb Atkinson and Max Ajomo starting.
That would be, for this game in particular, I think that's the pick to see what they look like in those shirts, because they've been the two form centres all year in the league. They seem to have the skill set and the physicality to step up to international rugby. They just need the opportunity. So hopefully that will come this season, but remains to be confirmed. Generally speaking, as a squad, it's an interesting one. I'm pretty happy with it. So you can argue the toss on a few positions, but
hey, Ted Hill and Guy Pepper are in. I'm happy with those two.
We'll obviously come on to them in a bit more detail later on, but very exciting to see them both in there again.
And I don't think this is the squad that's been confirmed for the tour of the Americas. I think this is literally just the France 15. So there may well be some more changes that come. So some of these names that we mentioned may come back into the fold. We never know.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll change a few. They may not even take 36 with them. They might trim that down by 2 or 3, but it won't change drastically. But there's also obviously the issue of if anyone goes up to the Lions, obviously Jamie George and Ashraf Bokovjor look like they're
kind of on the fringes, aren't they?
Next cabs off the rank in those positions. So no, but generally speaking, it's definitely an exciting looking squad. It'd be interesting to see how they go because I haven't seen the France squad. So
no, that'll be interesting because obviously their finals are still ongoing. I'm not sure how competitive of a squad they'll be able to pull together, but we'll see. We'll see. Right. It's still a lovely day and a lovely game of rugby to watch that I will be indulging with. And for anyone who is wondering, I believe it's all on the Rugby Pass app / websites if you want to watch it. So it is free to watch as well. Free to watch. So check that out. Now, Rory, that's the rugby news. That leads us on.
We've got to get into it.
We're heading in.
We've got to get into it.
We've got to get into the Premiership Rugby Final. You were there.
I was there.
Set the scene. Set the scene for us.
So, lovely day. Great day for it.
Did anyone come up and give you a smooch or a hooch?
No, disappointingly.
That's a shame.
But it was probably speculative on my part.
There's always next time.
Always next time. No, great day for it. Really, really good atmosphere. Obviously a sellout, which is great to see. Lots of kids there, which was always good to see. Good mix of people there. All right. The national anthem, I can see what they were trying to do, and I applaud them for trying to do something a bit different. It was a bit weird. It felt weird in the stadium. No one quite knew what was going on. So
I think when you book Sam Ryder, you expect him to sing, don't you?
I didn't expect him to do that. I get they were trying to do the Jimi Hendrix, Woodstock, Star Spangled Banner thing. The issue is the American anthem is objectively cooler than ours. And it's quite difficult to make God Save the King cool, whatever you do. Yeah. So it was on a bit of a hiding to nothing with that. But he tried it. Fair enough. They tried it. I think we probably won't see that happen again.
He's had some quite good humour post that, though, on his socials I've seen. He seems to have relatively taken it well, I think.
Good. Good.
I'm glad. I think he sees the funny side. He might not. I'm not sure.
It's not on him. He did. He did
well. He did what he was booked to do, and he did it very well.
He shredded God Save the King on the guitar. It's just when we were in the stadium and everyone's going, are we meant to sing this?
Yeah.
Is this a sing-along? And no one quite knew. It was a bit weird, but fine.
It was quite funny on the telly. They zoomed in on Dan Cole, who was clearly trying to hold back a smirk.
We were all laughing in the stands.
Yeah.
It was weird.
But,
I'd say I'm glad they tried something, because getting the army marching band and an opera singer in is a bit...
It's been
played out now.
It's been done.
I'm not even sure we need them, to be honest.
No. Yeah, there's that point as well. Sam Ryder's a big booking as well. So
huge booking.
We'll take it for the Premiership. Or should I say. The scene is set, Rory. A slightly odd start for what I will describe, and I know I'll get claimed harsh here, for worst Premiership final ever?
I would say I think that's a harsh assessment. It wasn't the free flowing game that last year was.
No.
It was a game short of
quality.
It was short of the spectacular. What I would say is, in the stadium, you really felt the tension and the physicality of it. It was fierce to watch.
That's good.
You could feel how big the hits were. And if we're being frank, for as good as Bath have been this season, they've generally not cut loose. And Leicester, we know, haven't cut loose, and we've taken a lot of criticism for pointing that out. So I wasn't expecting 7-style rugby, but what you got was a real nip tuck, fierce, tense, physical, right to the final whistle final. And I have to say, there's a lot of Bath fans. I think Bath outnumbered Leicester, actually, in terms of fans, which is probably the benefit of having it in West London, to be fair. That's when Leicester brought it back to within a couple of points at the end. there was some tension in the stadium. People were concerned about whether Bath could cling on, even to 40 men, which obviously we'll talk about at some point. But Leicester gave it absolutely everything to win that game, and they were so physical, so fierce. So best worst final depends how you measure it. If you want free flowing end to end rugby, which I love and I love to watch, then it wasn't a game for you. If you want the tension of a game that matters, how many World Cup finals are brilliant to watch? How many are just tense, physical affairs? I think there's something to be said for it. It's not a highlights reel game, but it is
tension,
pure passion, pure physicality,
full of tension, full of passion, full of physicality. And I think the only reason I say that is it felt, certainly the first half, there were so many errors, so many mistakes. Nothing seemed to work. Maybe that's just a byproduct of the physicality in defence from both sides.
I think it was. Leicester put Bath under real pressure throughout that game, to the point where, in a different way to how Bristol had Bristol obviously put a lot of pressure breakdown and a lot of pressure with their attack. Leicester put pressure on, yes, at the breakdown, but just with the speed and intensity of their defence. And it forced the errors. And it showed that if you want to compete against this Bath side, you have got to put blood, sweat and tears into everything you do. And if you do that, you can get pretty close to what they are. And I know that there's been a lot of discourse about Carl Dixon since the game. And a few people have been calling him out by name and in the mentions on Twitter, which I'm going to say straight off the bat, I don't like, particularly when I've seen journalists. I really disagree with that. I have to say, from being in the stadium, I'd like to hear your perspective on it. I thought Bath were getting some quite fortunate calls at scrum time. It felt, from where I was, and obviously it's not I was in the upper tier, so it's not an vantage point necessarily to see whether Leicester were in at the angle every time, but it felt to me like Bath was slightly getting away with it at scrum time, and it also looked like they're getting the rub of the green at the breakdown as well. I don't know what it looked like on the telly. For me, it felt like Bath were getting the rub of the green from Carl.
So from the telly, I thought Nicky Smith had Thomas Totoy on toast in the first half.
That's what it looked like to me.
I think he won that battle fair and square and was not getting the benefit of the doubt, and a couple of times was getting pinged quite wrongfully. I also agree, for most of the game, Bath were making an absolute mess of absolutely every single breakdown. It just seemed like the Wild West. And it was interesting hearing Ben Young's and Dan Cole's comments post-game, where they spoke about how at the breakdown it just seemed like the laws were out the window. Just nothing was getting pinged. And it did look like that from the telly. It also looked like the offside line was a little bit forgotten about as well. There's a few times.
I think that felt more like it was possibly on both sides.
Well, there's a few times, and maybe this is because it was Austin Healey, and we all know where his allegiances lie. A few times he pointed out how often Bath players were offside, and it was just ignored. Which is, I think that all that put into the same boiling pot is what has created this histrionics around Carl Dixon, who I'm not gonna blame him for anything like that. It's interesting that there's been fans from both sides who've both said he's got everything right, and there's fans from both sides who said he's got everything wrong. So to me, it seems like that's a ref that's been fair then, because if fans are feeling equally hard done by and equally done well by, what more can a ref do? Maybe not helped by a few notable incidents that we can talk about.
Montoya we'll go with first. Was it a yellow or was it a red?
I personally felt it was yellow's fine. The thing that seems to be forgotten about is there's the mitigating factor that Ted Hill was ducking into the tackle. He was also being tackled by another player. That everyone's forgotten about that.
It looked a yellow to me.
Everyone's forgotten about those mitigating factors. They're all saying, Montoya wasn't wrapping and he was leading with the shoulder. That's because Ted Hill was tackled and was falling into him, so it happened a bit earlier than Montoya was aiming for. Montoya clearly showed efforts to wrap post the contact. So for me, maybe it was starting at red, but mitigating comes down to yellow. So I was happy with the yellow card from Montoya. The fact that everyone seems to be claiming that is absolute dead on red for me is bizarre. It doesn't. That wasn't a red at all. Considering literally 10 minutes earlier there had been a complete head-on-head completely ignored because someone got tackled and dipped into the tackle. So you can't be on one hand think that's fine, that was dipping, there's mitigating, and then on the other hand, oh no, we'll ignore that mitigating factor, that's a red card because it looks like he's not wrapping. There's a reason it looks like he's not wrapping, it's because of the impact of the other tackler.
It looked like a yellow to me.
So
I've seen enough people say it's a red to think it's worth talking about today.
So I think Carl Dixon got it right.
I think he got that one right. I don't think he got the Dan Cole one right.
Oh, he definitely didn't get the Dan Cole one right.
That's not a yellow for me.
Absolutely nowhere near a yellow.
First and foremost, you always leave one on the kicker. You just that's one of the unwritten laws of the game. You leave one on.
Absolutely. And absolute credit to a tight head prop being in that position to be trying to charge down a kick.
100%.
So that alone, he should be getting a knighthood rather than a yellow card. But let's face it, he was committed. He was in the air. What could Dan Cole do? I think it's literally because he brought his hands down from the charge because he'd realised that he wasn't going to block it. So he brought his arms down to protect himself.
It's a penalty.
It's a penalty, sure. It's a penalty. It's not a yellow card. Like, how is that a yellow card offence?
I don't think so. And that was the moment really for me where I thought that's not great. That's not great for everything else. You can debate it, and I thought the scrums were being called the wrong way, but I'm sure there's other ways to view it. The breakdown, it's a Wild West. Sometimes it just is.
I do think it was a Wild West on both sides as well. To be fair,
possibly. I think Bath maybe got the rub of the green on it, but.
Bath were considerably worse, but Leicester then... I think Leicester realised that there was just nothing happening there, so they started doing a little bit themselves.
Absolutely. But that one, I thought, 100% wrong call.
And what about the Nicky Smith rip on the ground for the potential try-scoring opportunity?
Well, I was only able to really see this on the big screen in the stadium, and I'm going to caveat everything I've said up to this point.
It's based on big screen.
It's based on big screen, and also based on me having started drinking quite early in the day.
I'm surprised you've been so succinct.
I may have had to watch some of the highlights back to get all my thoughts on it. But it wasn't clear and obvious to me.
I agree.
I don't think so. I don't think it was clear and obvious. Were I on the other side of things, or either side of things really, I'm sure I'd have had a very strong opinion on which way it should have gone. But for my money, not clear.
To me, it looked like...
He probably has done something deliberate and illegal. But let's be realistic. Everyone does all the time. So
to me,
for my money, not a big thing.
It looked like a player that was making a tackle on the try line and does what every player does on the try line and keeps their arms in a little bit longer than they would normally to slow the ball down. He's heard the ref call release, so he's released. But when he's released, the ball's been released by the Leicester player and it's gone with his hand. It didn't look like he was scooping or pulling for it. Whether it was actually a knock-on, I don't know. It's a different story. But it's just like that's probably like the other incident that's been raised to me through the various channels. Again, I don't think Carl Dixon got it horrendously wrong. Was it a knock-on? I'm not sure. But benefit of the doubt. Can't see anything more clear-cut than that. Let's not dwell too long on it.
The only clear-cut thing for me was Dan Cole. Other than that, everything's a debate. But should we turn this around into a much more positive view of the happened, David? Because there were some lovely moments in this.
Do you want to start with moments or individuals?
Let's start with moments. I want to talk about the tries. Talk about all the individual tries. So Van Poortvliet obviously opens the batting, scores after 8 or 9 minutes.
The early doors.
And I was watching this back today, and I think they pointed out on comms. It's difficult to see it on the day, but I think you really got to praise Joe Hayes for the work that he does at the Mall. Takes out 2 Bath players when he gets spun out originally. And then when he rejoins the Mall, he takes out 2 or 3 other Bath players who'd probably swum a bit up the side. Spins them all back round to the right-hand side, which opens up the gate for then Van Poortvliet to then get over the line. So really good work by Joe Hayes. Nice Van Poortvliet as well. Another front row contribution, obviously Thomas scoring try after a nice little half break from Urbano. spots the the Leicester players all watch him. Hits the gap between 2 and 3 in the guard and third man. So it hits a nice little gap, nice bit of acceleration, and then Toy picks it up. Big power, big acceleration.
You're not stopping him from 3 meters out, are you?
No. He's had a hell of a season. He's a hell of a player. If they can keep him for the season, well played to them, because he has got to be in demand.
He's got to be. Well, I'm pretty sure he's around next season, just because, well, it's not been announced he's leaving. I'm sure he would have been announced if someone picked him up.
Must be. And he has been phenomenal since he's joined, but particularly this season.
He has been, although not so great in the scrum, but he made up for it in other areas.
No, he struggled there, but Nicky Smith's no mug at the scrum, and he's another one really great season. Really shown his quality this season, probably shown a back in Wales just how good he is, particularly selectors. If you are watching Warren Gatland, this was a guy you definitely should not have dropped. No, he's been brilliant for Leicester all season. So I can't blame Thomas Toy. You're not going to win the battle. Nicky Smith had his number on the day, but a great little finish from him and serious power once again. And then I think a player that who was instrumental in both of Leicester's comeback tries. We'll talk about Russell's intercept and try in a moment, but I want to talk about Ilioni again.
So good. And a player I really wanted to see in the England squad.
He's going from strength to strength at the moment, isn't
he? Yeah.
Really shining.
And boy, is he strong.
3 Bath players, including Guy Pepper, tried to stop him getting over the line. Couldn't. That is power.
It's pure power. Pure power. He just looks like a bit of a physical specimen. And we talk about in the past about players having superpowers. And that superpower can just be pure physicality, and he seems to have it. Between
him, Guy Pepper, certain Mr. Pollock, and let's be realistic, the Currys are only about 25. There is a real battle to get into that back row at the moment. And that's before you even talk about Ted Hill, Chandler Cunningham South. Ben Earl probably was Ben Earl 27, 28?
Round about that. It's a good.
You have got to go some to get in that England shirt at the moment.
You do. Like Tom Pearson, he's been dropped from that England squad. Tom Pearson's been dropped.
To be honest, I think at this point we have to go back to nepotism, because actually on merit it's very difficult to split them.
Let's just go with who has the best family ties.
Who's the richest? Which is
This was picked by the family's heritage. It's Ilioni. I think he needs to be starting to be considered amongst that sort of bracket of player. And Leicester,
if he can start more for Leicester, I think
Jeff
he's
Parley, you need to start starting him week in, week out, because yes, he is fantastic off the bench as an impact player, but boy, he could start and he'll do a job from the beginning. So get him on.
Mind you, who are you dropping? Rafael, Liebenberg, Cracknell? That's not an easy choice.
I'd have Ilioni over Rafael personally if I was picking a team.
Big call. I like Rafael.
I'm not anti-Rafael. I think he's had quite a quiet season by his standards.
Possibly.
But that is because his standards are so high, I will add. I think Ilioni, and I'm an absolute sucker for a young upcoming talent getting far much more minutes than they probably should do. But it's because minutes get you so much development, and he's been in around that squad for like 2 years now. He deserves a shot in the starting shirt for me.
He's only, 24, 23,
24. So he's still got a lot of rugby ahead of him. And
finishing his medical degree.
Well, and the fact that he hasn't played a lot of rugby is probably good news for his longevity in the.
Absolutely.
We've seen some of these other flankers who've been absolutely flogged and are now being held together by scientific miracles. No names mentioned. Twindaloo. So, yes, Ilioni. But you mentioned his name there. There's one player that really needs to be spoken about, I think, and that's Guy Pepper for me.
Oh, my God. When Van Graan, earlier in the season, compared him to Richie McCaw, I thought that's mental, but quite funny, and brilliant if he's right.
Yeah.
Brilliant if he's right, but you're just asking for pelters. He might not be miles off.
No. It's quite funny. I saw some people making comments saying Guy Pepper was Henry Pollock before Henry Pollock came along. And I don't think that's far from the truth, because it's just the fact that he's taken this slightly longer route to being in a top team, because he's come through Newcastle. He's had to really work to not necessarily displace Underhill, but has to live within this rotation system in Bath.
Yeah.
But he's unreal. Genuinely, he is
a specimen. Specimen.
And he's like 22, 23?
22. He's a different player to Pollock. He's not as... What's the right way to put this? He's not as flash, I would say. Outwardly flash.
Not many are compared.
No, but his nuts and bolts are phenomenal. And he is strong. That finish for his try was strength. I know Radwan is obviously not the biggest player, but Radwan's deceptively powerful, and Pepper swatted him off like a little boy. Yeah. And there's a lovely little swerve of the hips as well to get around him. And
I know you love a swerve of the hips.
I love a swerve of the hips. I think Guy Pepper is destined for the top, and the battle for who gets that 7 shirt is going to be incredible. If he gets his shot over the side, he might become irresistible. Who knows where England go with this?
It's a very good problem to have. Very good problem to have.
I mean, Ted Hill's on the other side. He's only 26, and he is another phenomenal athlete. I honestly don't know how you fit them all in. I don't envy Borthwick's job of having to make that decision, but Guy Pepper in particular, phenomenal against Bristol. Probably kept Bath in the hunt for a title with his performance against Bristol, particularly in that first half. And once again, phenomenal in the final, and one of, if not the difference maker.
Oh, for me, he was the best player on that pitch that day.
Looked it.
I know you wanted to talk about the Finn Russell intercept.
Well, I want to put this in the context of Ray Pollard losing his clutch status.
You could say that, because both from hand and from foot, they were perhaps not so concrete.
No. I mean, it's a hell of a read from Russell, although you'd probably also argue quite telegraphed from Pollard and not the right move at the right time. How do you assess Andre Pollard for Tigers as a signing in general?
I think underwhelming would be the summary.
Yeah. Which is a shame, because obviously double World Cup winner, superstar player, and the battle of two superstar 10s. Finn Russell won that battle, didn't he?
Oh, sure. On the day, Finn Russell was miles better.
Finn Russell came out on top and probably proved a few whoever's still left as an ace-sayer. I know there's a few. He's proved them wrong about who's the real clutch 10 at the moment, because he was great. He was great, and lovely moment passing it to Ajomo on the inside. Explain after the match, because Ajomo's a local boy, obviously Steve Ajomo's son. He was a Bath boy himself.
Yeah, it's lovely. Lovely little touch there. And I also think that is testament to, I think one of the reasons why Finn Russell was able to make that intercept is the pressure that Ajomo was putting on that Leicester backline the entire game with his speed off the line.
He's another one who's starting to look irresistible as a prospect. I really want to see him and Lawrence play together more as soon as Lawrence is back for Bath, because as a partnership, that excites me.
That could be lethal for everyone else in the league. So I'd love to see it, but just not when they play Northampton or Gloucester on your behalf.
Yeah. For Gloucester, you can send the Shags.
They love it when you refer to them as the Shags.
It's gone down very well in the past. No, some absolutely notable performances from Russell and Ajomo in particular. Ben Spencer, I thought, was very good. Knock on a singer.
So I'm never one to compliment Austin Healey that much, but I thought some fabulous punditry when he said Joe knock on a singer. I thought, to be fair, he had about 5 or 6 knock-ons in the first half, and I thought that's just bravo. Just
that's
a little clap to Austin Healey there for coming up with that, because that's just lovely stuff.
That's a great bit of work.
Lovely bit of work. Have you seen the comments from Ben Young's post game about why he did that box kick in the last minute?
No.
So that's where they all spoke about how the rules at the breakdown just weren't being policed in any way. And he wanted to go for it, but a Bath player, which he did not name, basically just reached out and pulled him back into the ruck so he couldn't go quickly, and has made a real mess of it. So he had no choice because all the shape had been lost, so he had to box kick it.
I'm not going to argue with Ben Young's assessment of the game. He had enough miles on the belt to make a decision. In the stadium, there was a bit of a...
Yes, moment. I felt it as well. I thought the second they kicked it away, that's the game. With how dominant they'd been in the air the entire game, like they really targeted Freddie Stewart. They really made his aerial game, which is something of a strength of his, really look like a weakness. Will Muir and Tom de Glanville specifically were fantastic at that.
They were. They absolutely were. But you got to assess the game for what it is. And I guess if Ben Young's decided that we can't go from here, but it felt like the wrong call.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
You make those decisions in the game. You say Ben Youngs knows more about it than most, so
yeah,
I can understand why he'd make that call based on that. But
and in other games in the season, as the season gone by, that tactic probably would have worked because Hassel Collins and Stewart have been the dominant ones in the air in many games. So it's not like it's not a play that they would have gone to and it would have been effective. So you can't really blame him for that. So any final thoughts on this game and the season as a whole, Rory?
As a season as a whole, I think absolute kudos to basically all 10 teams for creating what I think has been a thoroughly entertaining season. We look forward to next season, hopefully a resurgent Exeter, a resurgent Northampton, the Newcastle Red Bull Falcons, making pending. An impact as well. Name pending. As a whole, perfect, no season is, but some fantastic moments, lots of great games, and to be realistic, the right team won the title in the end.
Yeah.
Bath have been the standout team all season, fully deserving of winning a title. Leicester 100% played their part, very nearly upset the apple cart on the day, but the right team won the trophy. And as loath as I am to admit it.
Yeah, winners. And I will point out to any Bath fan who thinks I may have been overly negative about them at any point, I tipped Bath to win this the day after the Northampton Saints beat them in the final last year. So I've been predicting this for some time, and once again, my prediction skills are on point, and I didn't need to get the dog to do it either. I did it myself, that prediction. I'm similarly minded, Rory. I think it's been a fantastic season. I think each team has brought something to the campaign that has been a real positive, a real plus. Even the likes of Newcastle, like the stories that have come out of there, some of the performances they put in where they've put, they've put a real heart and effort in, moments that have been like class. Exeter, they've not had their best year. I think each team has brought something to the season as a whole. And I agree. I can't wait for next year already. And we just got a little summer to get through with a little bit of other bits of rugby to it. But I already can't wait because I think the next season is going to be even closer than this year. Because I think, as you say, I think Northampton will be more in the equation. I think Harlequins will be more in the equation. I think Exeter could potentially be in the equation. Maybe not for the top, but I really think that they will have the potential to really upset the top runners and kind of real influence on how that table looks. So
yeah, great. Onwards and upwards for the league. Onwards and
upwards for the league. Ultimately, just a congratulations to Bath for winning the damn thing. We have to hear about you winning the treble now for the next 12 months, even though, as they described it themselves, it is the Timu treble. Words, not mine. I'm going to point out Will Stewart used that caption himself on his Instagram. So I can use that without pelters. Thank you very much. On from Premiership Rugby Final, Rory. First bit of news. Well, not fruit news. We're going to be looking at the Under-20s World Cup, Rory. Little intro for the listener, because I personally have a very strong passion for development rugby and coming through, and I think the pathway in England is particularly good, and I take a keen eye on that with kind of rugby and things like that. I know Rory's also a big fan of spotting the youngsters and seeing how they develop and following them once they come through under-20s into club rugby. Something that we're really keen on. And the Under-20 World Cup starts in just a matter of weeks, Rory, and I'm excited.
Absolutely. Well, it's very much your area of expertise, David, but I would particularly like to know is how are England shaping up for this tournament, do you think? I know they've won a couple of their warm-up games.
They've had 2 warm-up games. Recently they had a warm-up game against Georgia, playing the under-20s from Georgia, and I'll tell you, that's not a walkover, and they put 40 points on them in Georgia. Watch the highlights of that game, because apparently the only way to watch that game would be watching it on the Georgian Rugby Facebook page, which isn't something I subscribe to. I've caught the highlights, and that Georgia pack was massive. I think the England pack is probably the biggest I've seen under 20s for some time, but I think the Georgia pack was bigger than England's.
Yeah.
Huge. And it was a close match in the first half, so I think that shows more about the competitiveness of Georgians under-20 side. I think they'll be interesting in this tournament. But England just had the quality, and they managed to score up 40 points. But I think the squad they're pulling together, I look at the under-20 squad every single year, every single time they do this tournament. I think this year is the first time in a long, long time where it's packed, literally packed full of players who've got Premiership experience now. There are a number of names in there who have got minutes in the Premiership, or Prem, as we should call it. I think it's a real testament to this generation coming through that they're ready for senior men's rugby much earlier than previous have been. And there are some real high-ceiling, high-potential players coming through for England. And I think this is going to be a really interesting tournament because this is off the back of their the 20s version of the Rugby Championship has been taking place. So there's been a bit more competitive rugby for New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Argentina. They've all a bit more competitive rugby than they have done usually in the past iterations. So whether that's going to put them in a better place.
It's only, the second or third time they've had that tournament, which just feels like a strange thing to have not had.
Yeah. Maybe they've realised they were missing a trick.
Yeah. I'm this tournament. Last year was obviously very exciting, obviously England, which is always great. But yeah, that we've seen, obviously partly under 26 nations, but the ones who've actually come through and played a bit of Prem rugby as well. I mean, there's some names coming through. Botgreave at Gloucester, obviously, who's got a bit of a run of games towards the end of the season. Ty Raymond, the Sale prop, I'm really excited to see what he does. Billy Seller. Yeah, is it the Exeter flanker?
So George Timmins, he's at Bath. He's at Bath now.
Bath. He looks another exciting back row option. Yeah. I'm excited for this tournament, and I'm expecting some real competition from the likes of obviously France, New Zealand. I think Australia's under-20s have been vastly improved the last few years.
Yeah.
South Africa under-20s, usually Argentina under-20s are looking good in the last couple of years as well.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Georgia are more competitive as well. You know, Ireland, the Welsh maybe struggling a little bit, but I think they're on the upward turn.
Yeah. I think rugby is improving across the piece, really.
Yeah.
I do think England will be going into this as favourites. Well, rightfully so. They are kind of reigning champions based on the squad alone. So the that played Georgia. I'm just counting 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 16 of the players named in that Georgian side have played Premiership rugby this year. 16 of them.
Yeah. So huge change. That's sea change.
That is a real sea change.
And actually, hopefully, what I actually hope is that you maybe will see the same number playing Prem rugby, but also a lot more playing regular minutes in Champ rugby as well, and hopefully seeing an improvement there, making that a much more competitive tournament. And actually, you'll start seeing that thoroughfare of players really, really coming through at high quality at young ages.
Yeah. One thing I will announce is that I'm going to try and do some live streams for the tournament. So the way the tournament runs is they play all the games of round 1 on the same day, all the games of round 2 on the same day, and all the games of round 3 on the same day. And all the teams are in pools where they play everyone in their pool, and then it's kind of seeded, and then your teams based on your seed in the knockouts. I'm going to try and do live streams for as much of that as I can, just so I can talk through the players that are playing to the people who want to watch. I'll probably do it on TikTok, but I'll see if I have ways of doing it in kind of multiple platforms. Don't want to adjust yet, because I know there are many, including Rory. So make on Instagram as well. I don't know, Twitch. I don't know. I'll have a think, see what we can do, see if we can go really out there. But I want to bring this under-20s World Cup to the listener, because it's so exciting, and I think, not to blow my own trumpet, but I might be one of the ones that can talk about it with a little bit of, a thinly veiled confidence, and maybe know what I'm talking about a little bit. That's the only thing being that's the mission statement of the podcast. Yeah, the thinly veiled bit of confidence. That sounds like we know what we're talking about. So yeah, I can't wait. I don't think the England squad has been 100% nailed down yet. So I've got a keep eye on when that gets announced. Some of the squads have been announced. The New Zealand squad looks tasty, so that'll be an interesting one. Yeah, I can't wait. So space will be about it at much greater length as the weeks go by.
As if that wasn't enough, listener, this Friday you also have the British and Irish Lions versus Argentina.
Oh yeah, that thing.
So not only do you have the England tour to the Americans, Under-20s World Cup, the Lions tour, the Women's World Cup.
Yeah.
Very closely. And then all the way back again to Prem Rugby.
Oh, we can't wait.
The fun doesn't stop.
The fun doesn't stop. And we are on board the train until destination. Just going to tell you that right now. I can't wait. It's going to be such a good summer of rugby. At home, I've written up a whiteboard where I've written every single fixture down that I want to watch. And I'm going to commit to it. The only problem is I have a little bit of a surgery in the middle of it all, which, you know, I'll figure my way around. But hey, that means I'll get a couple of weeks off work to watch more rugby. So I'm excited.
We should all get surgery.
Right. Rory, is there any DPRFR news for the listener this week?
Well, the DPRFR is closing the curtains on this season. No one individual to an annual celebration, an annual parade in honour of the props and the hookers that have shone this season. Just to name but a few: Thomas Toy, Stewart, Julian Montoya, Dan Cole, Joe Hayes, Nicky Smith, Vasogban, Gatotsev, Jamal Ford Robinson, the prop in the land, Slimani, the second sexiest prop in the land. Yeah, I mean, it's just a great year for the DPRF. Lots of men to shout about. Ewan McCallum up at getting performance of the season, DPRFR trophy.
Outstanding
for
property.
propping excellence.
Yeah.
Outstanding property. It's been a great year, and it's been a pleasure to highlight some of the fine men and women of the, and I look forward to bringing more highlights over the summer and into next season.
Absolutely.
The sun never sets on DPRFR, that's for sure.
But I do think the listener will need to appreciate that a lot of tight road. The listener will have to appreciate a lot of front rowers will be going into hibernation over the summer because it is getting a bit hot out there. People start talking about sevens. They start talking about
to hide away from pre-season.
Yeah, pre-season. So maybe the DPRFR not be a weekly feature, but we'll dip our toes in as and when we can. And then when the Premiership comes back, it'll be back with a vengeance. I'm telling you that. We can't wait. But yeah, an absolute. The front rowers do their thing. It's been beautiful to highlight and beautiful to champion, like no other podcast does. We are certainly the front row end here at Ruckballs Over Balls. Now, that feels like a real nice sentimental moment to bring the podcast to a close. Rory, do you have any final words for the listener before we bring episode 25 to its end?
Next year, Gloucester's year. You heard it here first.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Rory's gone early. He's claiming Gloucester's got the win. But we've been Ruxmalls Over Balls. And we will be back next week with even more rugby nonsense.